Likewise, the very first Mochimo pool. That's another thing that's happened since this time last year. Is there's at least 2 third-party pools. I think there might even be a third one. And these are things that community members chose to do to benefit our project. We have also the farm manager tool, which is this, like every time I see it, I'm like, that looks really, really amazing. That's our system, because these people are like, well, hey, I'm running 20 or 30 miners. This interface that we have to your system via Linux is a little difficult to look at when you've got 20 or 30 of them at the same time. So they've got these farm managers with health checks and all these like status indicators so they can keep track of their they look like those online poker players, with all the different little windows. I think it's amazing. But again, it's just another community member that said, hey, there's a need there. Belgarian, fantastic programmer. Another person that just joined the team. I think he joined the core contributor team maybe 2 or 3 months ago. But he had been contributing already in the areas of optimizing our GPU miner. Look, I can program in C. And I can sort of program in CUDA, but I needed to get it done. And here we have an expert that just knows the stuff inside and out that's been assisting us. And, I produced a Windows version of the miner, which was a huge accomplishment for me because I had to use MS Visual C++, and it's awful. Thank you, Microsoft. It's terrible. And Bell came in and rescued that and made it better. And just another member of the community that said, hey, I see something good here. I'm going to put my time and energy into making it better. And so those are the sorts of people that we invited into the core contributor team over the year. They're people that were really already working for the project. And that's just how it goes. And we have a number of people that are doing projects outside of the quote unquote core contributor team. And hopefully I can get them to join the team at some point. But really they're doing their own side projects. I think the mcmpool.pw is completely third party run. They're collecting Mochimo for groups of miners that are mining not even visible on our Mochi map. They're relaying transactions and relaying mining solutions to and from the network and collecting a percentage. I think this is amazing. It's
really amazing.
Yeah, it's an economy that's grown up around the coin.
Nice. So let's get into some of these questions here. Reminder, if you have questions, please put them in the stream questions channel, and we'll read through them and see what looks good here. So I guess the first question I have, I know I might surprise you with this one, but why does our symbol mean blood? I'd like you to take you.
That wasn't on the list.
I'd like to take you through why our symbol means blood, particularly for our Asian community who always ask this question, do you know what the symbol means? And explain to the folks in the community how this project came about.
Okay, a little backstory to this question. So it turns out that the logo symbol for Mochimo is a little bit off-putting to people who speak languages that are derivative of Chinese kanji. If you're a Japanese-speaking person or a Chinese-speaking person, when you look at our symbol, the thing that jumps out at you is the little stylized M in the middle, which is the kanji character for blood or ki, depending on how you interpret it. So, rightly they ask this question: why does your coin mean blood? And in fact, by the way, they call it. I am reliably informed. They call it in China blood coin. And with some degree of affection or disdain, I'm not really sure which, but it definitely catches people's eye, which was entirely my intent. It's entirely a marketing ploy. No, that's not true. Okay, so here's the real story behind the blood coin. The reason why Mochimo exists is that we have, by we I mean me and a couple of people who started a nonprofit a few years ago. We have a need to provide some life-saving services to people who are suffering from addiction disorders that are often fatal, particularly people who are dealing with the opioid crisis. And before I created Mochimo, I created something called Safe Exchange Tampa, which is a nonprofit that distributes Narcan, which is an opioid agonist. We distribute it on the streets for people to use when they're around somebody who's having an overdose. And it's a nasal spray. It's actually quite expensive. But it's the difference between life and death. People use these things when somebody's having an overdose, and within a minute, it's managed to stop it and bring them back to life. So since we started Mochimo, we have over 160 reported overdose reversals. That's just what's been reported back to us from that work. So I envisioned Mochimo as a vehicle for funding the nonprofits that I run. We also run Period Poverty Florida. Period Poverty Florida is aimed at providing menstrual supplies in public schools first, and later to the indigent and homeless populations, right? So there's another tie-in with blood there. The idea that there are little girls that miss school because they get their period and don't have menstrual supplies. So that's probably not a question or an answer you were expecting to hear on a cryptocurrency-related
forum.
Forum, whatever you want to call it. So bottom line is, it's so that we can save lives. That's why I'm doing this. The whole point of this project was to bring in funding that we could use to turn around and in a very real way keep people on the streets from dying, to strengthen dignity for menstruating students. Those things that are important to me, I think, should be important to everyone, as far as the whole idea that we're out there saving lives. So that's why it's called blood coin. It's blood money to me, but in a good way. Like we're using it to buy lives, right?
Yeah. And how many to date have we done reversals for?
I think it's 160.
160, yes. That's 160 people that exist on the planet and are getting help with the disease that they suffer because we were able to generate some side money from this project to fund the nonprofit.
Oh, that's a good point. So if you look, that we did a small pre-mine of this coin. Really, technically, it's an Instamine. I'm supposed to say that for regulatory reasons. SEC, it's an Instamine, not a pre-mine. Okay, we know that. But everybody knows what a pre-mine is, and nobody knows what an Instamine is. And disclaimer. So we did a pre-mine for this coin, and while I have not personally benefited from any of those coins, one of the things that we were able to do this year was to donate a small percentage of those coins to Safe Exchange to help fund the operations. And with those coins, we were able to rent an office and hire a full-time person, and we have seen a marked uptick in the number of overdose reversals reported since we've been able to actually hire people to do the work, in addition to me also volunteering at the methadone clinics and out on our streets. It's really turned things from me just kind of stumbling along trying to make things happen to a much more professional engagement, where our clients or clinics can reach out and have somebody that they can talk to at any moment during business hours, instead of me sitting there trying to do my consulting work and doing Mochimo and doing all of the things that I do and have just barely enough time to sleep at night. So that's the short answer.
That's the short answer. So one of the questions, we've had several questions that are really around decentralization, and decentralization, or the sufficiency of decentralization, is something that the SEC has brought up. What does decentralization mean? What is a decentralized project? What is sort of the litmus test for that? And where do we fit on that scale? What does decentralization mean?
Well, in short, the administrative control of the ledger. That's what centralization means. That means that there is a trusted entity or party in a system that could, at their discretion, change the contents of the ledger.
Okay.
Are you saying, is there an audio issue happening right now?
I'm just checking to make sure. Can you guys, can you guys hear us okay? If you can message and let us know. It looks like Chris is typing.
Yeah, we're going to pause for a second to make sure that people can hear us.
So some people are saying it looks like one person's having some challenges. I slid the mic forward a little bit. Okay, and Chris is telling me how to fix it. Okay, I'm going to do that.
In just a moment, we are going to adjust the audio so that everybody can hear.
Yeah, I have it on. Did they say turn that off? Oh, to select a manual. Okay, I see. So that's probably the problem. Okay. So I'll go with that setting. And if you see any problems, just go ahead and message us back in the question and answer channel. So back to decentralization.
Sure. So what we were saying is that the test for centralization is whether there is an administrative authority that can dictate the contents of the ledger. And that's the short of it. There isn't really much more that you have to say about it. But what the extension of that are those people that can dictate the future of the ledger and how people access, add, and change it. Wait, what's going on here?
Chris says change it back.
Oh, God. Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it must be connection. Okay, I've put it back and we'll just kind of roll with it.
Should I just get right up on this mic? I can put the mic in my mouth if you want.
No.
I
can just bump
roll
the
around in my mouth.
I just bumped the gain a little bit on the mic. That might MCO ASMR. That's funny. All right. Okay, so back to decentralization. Take 3.
Take 3. In case you didn't hear it before due to the audio quality issues, the test for whether a coin is centralized is whether there's an administrative authority that can change the ledger. Mm-hmm. Point blank. If any entity whatsoever can change the ledger via any means other than completing a valid transaction, then you've got centralization.
Right.
So, full stop. You can extrapolate that idea and say that if somebody has the ability to change the way that people interact with the ledger, in other words, change the definition of what is a transaction, or change the sorts of things that are allowed to adjust the ledger in the future, meaning that they have full administrative control over the code as well, then by extension, that's a kind of centralization. So one of the things that we've done at Mochimo to move away from that, and to be clear, every project, no matter how decentralized they might be, starts at some point as a centralized project. They have to, because somebody has to set the initial rules of the system. So as we have matured, like when we launched our mainnet, we released the code into the public for editing on the GitHub, so anybody can fork copies of our code or create compatible software that can interact with our network without necessarily using our code. And anybody can interact from a protocol level, creating their own wallets, creating their own miners. We've seen that happen. We've seen our code get ported. So the bottom line is, if a project is closed source, then it is also centralized. So one of the things that we did right out of the gate with the mainnet launch was we made the project open source. Everybody can see and edit the code. There are some things in there that are patented. They are licensed products.
And so how does that work? Get into that a little bit. Because we've got a lot of questions about that. Like, how can you be open source but be patented?
Okay, so it's actually pretty easy. What defines a project as open source is whether or not somebody can see, view, edit, and compile the code, which is what people can do with our code. What they can't do is own that code for other commercial purposes. Meaning you can't take our code and go make Mochimo version 2 or some other coin altogether. And the reason for that is that we have a separate venture called Adequate Systems that actually holds all of the copyright, the trademarks, and the patents for the innovations that we've created for the purposes of doing other crypto-related projects in the space. There's lots of things that we might do as Adequate Systems that would use the code base or reuse some of the technology that we created. And I feel like we have a right to do that, and we have a right to expect other people to not take our code and use it to create other crypto projects. So that's the dividing line. We're a little bit different from other projects because they're not thinking about how they can use their own innovations. And the reason they're not thinking that, Terry, is because they didn't create their project from scratch.
Right.
We did. There are less than 50 completely unique code bases in the crypto space, and Mochimo is one of them. And we all put a lot of time and energy into it without receiving any of that upfront ICO money. right? And in the long run, that's going to benefit the people that were part of that team as we create other things, not other competing cryptocurrencies, but other blockchain-related initiatives that can use that IP.
Nice.
So it's not centralized, guys. You can take our code and do whatever you want with it, and put it in any kind of system that you want, so long as it's for the benefit of Mochimo. It's when you start to create other projects or other cryptocurrencies that you stepped across the line with our license. So does that answer your question?
It does. It does. So that's great. So we are a fully decentralized project. We've got some open source code, and we're retaining a little bit of license for other possible use cases down the road.
That's right.
As a company, but the community has these tools, and license is basically it's durable and eternal.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, is that this license you can't pull the rug out from under you. It's this license. This is a community project. It was birthed as a community project, and it will remain a community project.
That's a fact. Yes.
So it's a great project, and we know about the quantum resistant piece, because that's something that we talk about right up front, right? We're a quantum resistant blockchain. We're the first quantum resistant blockchain to go live with mainnet. But what are the other features? Tell us about some of the other things that are amazing about this particular coin or this crypto that are different.
So what we designed was a medium of exchange, and the intention is to be a transaction network as opposed to a store of value or an investment network. And to that end, one of the things that we focused on early on is keeping the code base lean and fast. And we were able to do that because we built it from scratch using modern programming techniques. And at the bare minimum, one of the things that we bring to the table is a fully decentralized system with a much higher transaction per second throughput. And even further to that end, we have taken the very next step in that with the multi-destination transactions, which are coming in 2.4, which is being released very soon. Multi-destination transactions allow a single transaction to send up to 200 destinations, all in one TX, which further increases the scope of what we can push through the system in any given moment. So those organizations that are doing high quantities of transactions will be able to concatenate those all into a single TX and push it on the wire. And crucially, it takes up the exact same amount of space, the exact same amount of bandwidth on the wire to push those 100 plus transactions as it does to push a single one. Because
wow,
yes.
So I didn't realize that. That's pretty stunning, actually, because you currently have Bitcoin pushing on a good day with all firing on all cylinders. It gets 16 transactions a second, and we can push one, and that's a multi-destination one.
Yeah, that's right. So one transaction can host up to 200 destination endpoints in a single TX, which basically scales our system. When we had already done burn-in tests around this time last year with some slow hardware, and we were crossing the 170 TPS threshold very comfortably. And here we have the ability to take each one of those TXs and multiplex it into 100 plus. So it's fast and it's powerful, and so it scales better than, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum. And one of the ways that we were able to do that is by keeping the content of the blockchain simplistic. It's not designed to be this complex smart contract system. It's not suffering from 10 years of bloat from multiple different developers getting in there and adulterating the code base like Bitcoin and its million clone army. It's all clean and fast. And we did it for a reason, because we want to be a true transaction network. And you're not going to compete with Visa at 16 or 160 or even 1600 transactions per second. You need something that can scale, kind of like what we've built. It's only getting faster.
So you mentioned the word bloat. And since we're talking about bloat, let's talk about the problem of blockchain bloat.
Yeah, so it's real. You've got a problem with hundreds of gigabytes of data, historic data, that's being retained inside of blockchains today that are essentially they're growing to a size that can no longer be comfortably housed on retail hardware. After a certain point, the largest retail hard drives, I think right now that you can get are maybe 4 gigs. I'm not sure. I'm sure we've got some tech nerds out there that could probably correct me, but I think if you're lucky, you can find a 4 terabyte, terabytes, yeah, a 4 terabyte hard drive, right? And Ethereum's over a terabyte already, with all of its traces, and Bitcoin is in the several hundreds of gigs now, and all of that data you have to download, you have to walk through, you have to maintain indefinitely for those systems to work properly.
Yeah, like I had expressed it, it took me 40 hours to sync a node of Monero.
In Monero, yeah, it's not nearly the size of a Bitcoin, but it still took you 40 hours. It takes some people weeks to download the full blockchain for Bitcoin. What we've done with Mochimo is we created this truncated plateauing system called the Neogenesis block, chain crunch, if you will. Essentially what we do is we take the entire ledger data and we compact it into a new Genesis block every 256 blocks. We keep a couple of those on the disk for validation purposes, and we have a proof of work chain, a POW chain, called the trailer file that contains the historic record going back to block 0 of all of the actual work that was performed on the chain and all of the necessary elements, sans the blockchain data, to compute from block 0 to block now the full proof of work algorithm, meaning the pieces that we need, the Merkle root and the solution knots and all of the bits in the trailer and header that you need, but none of the bloaty transaction stuff needs to stay. So while you can archive those things, you don't need to. And what that means is that people can spin up a new Mochimo node in a couple minutes. That the Mochimo node on disk right now uses, less than 100 megabytes. Even though we've been running for a full year and have had constant transactions on our network, it's going to remain reliably small because the amount of blockchain data that you need to maintain the fidelity of the ledger is at most 512 blocks. So that's a huge innovation. We kind of just let that go on the wayside most of the time, but it speaks to usability, scale, and adoption in a way that other projects can't match.
Yeah. So we have quantum resistance.
Mm-hmm.
We have wicked fast transaction network.
That's right.
We have something that's going to be light and easy to sync a node for eternity.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you need?
Well, we've got this. It's interesting. We've got this tag system, which I think it goes kind of under the radar as well. We've got post-quantum secure digital signature algorithm, and with that comes some usability issues. Typically, like with IOTA, it's a real cluster over there. I mean, it's bad. You can only use their addresses one time. You have to recommunicate your address. It's really quite awful. And the technology that underlies our signatures is derivative of the same digital signature algorithm. But one of the things that we do is we have an abstraction between the underlying digital signature algorithm and the address that we use to send and receive money, which is that address tag. So your address tag is it's 24 hex characters, it's 12 bytes, it's very short, really easy to type in. But on our blockchain, it's bound to the much larger current address that's associated with that tag. And you can only sign that address one time. And that's the secret sauce for quantum resistance, is that address is 2,000 plus bytes, not bits. Okay, it's a one-time hash algorithm, and it is recognized by the PQ Crypto Working Group as post-quantum secure. It's enormous, and typically that makes things unwieldy and bulky. So one of the things that we did by adding this tag system is we have made it possible at Mochimo to add additional signature algorithms in the future. Because that abstraction layer, the tag doesn't care what kind of address it's bound to. So you can send in the future, if we add a different algorithm, if we say, we found a better PQ crypto algorithm, or there's something that we don't like about this one. If we learn something new about it that we don't like, we can easily add a different algorithm and migrate the tags over to the new algorithm, and on the back end it won't care. I mean, you keep your tags. So it's one of the things that we did. It's forward looking. We designed with the expectation that we don't know what we don't know, and for all we know, some even better, faster, niftier address digital signature algorithm will come along where we want to use that one instead. And so the tag system makes us able to do that, makes us able to reuse an address, quote unquote, on a system that has one-time signatures that underlie it. It's really quite an innovation, and I think it's going to do wonders for us in the future. And in fact, the multi-destination transaction feature is one such example, where we use the same size PDU, protocol data unit, to contain dozens of tags as a destination instead of a single enormous Watts address.
It's pretty amazing. Sometimes you'll have a technology that does something behind the scenes that no one really sees or understands, and sometimes you'll have an innovation that is really directly for the user's use. But this is something that actually touches on both of those things. Like behind the scenes, it allows us to swap out algos as we find a better, faster, more technologically relevant way of doing the thing. And it makes it so much easier for the end user to be able to just get a tag and use the fountain, which we should probably talk about the fountain. So what is the fountain? Like, how did the fountain come about?
Oh, that's another. Okay, so another community-provided benefit is the ability to automatically register a tag. So if we were to have a tag be bindable for free on our network, what it would mean is people would proliferate tags and take up space on the blockchain with the underlying Watts signatures. So in order to have a tag registered on blockchain to receive coins, it has to be bound to a Watts address. And in order to bind it to a Watts address, it has to have a balance. And there's a minimum balance amount to register a tag on the network, and that's to prevent unnecessary proliferation of ledger size. And so the tag system requires that somebody first fund the tag, typically from untagged address. And that can be really problematic from a usability perspective. So one of the things that our wallet does on initialization of a new address is it reaches out to the fountain and says, hey, would you mind putting a little bit of Mochimo in this account? It's a very small amount. It's like 500 satoshis. So it's 500 billionths of a coin, but it's just enough to register it on the blockchain. And so that fountain is a public service that you can download. We have a Fountaineers channel where people host their own fountains. They can download the code. But the bottom line is it's a usability solution to allow people who are just coming into the ecosystem to quickly and easily register a tag on the blockchain.
Nice. Well, that's super cool. So we talked about tags, we talked about decentralization, we've talked about all these other things that we do. We should probably talk about the FPGAs a little bit.
FPGAs, sure.
As a lot of you know, we're a CPU, GPU mining coin, and in the last few months, the FPGA miners took interest in our network, and one of the things that our code addresses is the FPGAs. And I want to touch on the point that we mentioned earlier, not on the call, but when we were talking about the approach that we actually took and how it's a little different. We didn't just flat out kill them. Yeah. So tell us about, how do the FPGAs make you feel, Matt? Talk to us about that.
Oh, I'm a big fan of FPGAs for any other project. So one of the things that we found over the last few months is that people were able to port the trig algorithm that underlies the versions of the code up through version 2.3 into an FPGA, which is intensely fast and much more energy efficient than our GPU miners. And the community, being comprised entirely of GPU miners, understandably was not happy about this. And so we had to make a decision about, how do we want to address or deal with the problem of FPGAs dominating the network. Because you had one or two people out there that were out hashing or out solving 90, 100 different GPU miners.
Mm-hmm.
So we asked the community, we said, what do you want us to do? Do we embrace this technology? Do we say, oh, well, I guess we're an FPGA mined coin now? Do you want us to do some kind of code change that would exclude the FPGAs? And the entire community, without fail, it was unanimous in our open discussion that we had. Everybody was like, get rid of them. We want them off the network entirely. Punish the FPGAs. How dare they? And I feel their passion, right? Because these are a lot of people who've invested their time and energy into mining. A lot of basement miners and people that it's their first time mining the cryptocurrency, and they were super excited to be able to mine currency at all. And then suddenly you've got these people who through cleverness and artifice have relegated these people to being unable to mine. And so we said, do we completely remove them from the system, or do we find a way to have an inclusive algorithm? That was a thought, because we don't want to exclude people from the network. And one of the things that Ortis and Chris were able to do, again, we would be nowhere without these guys, is to come up with a solution, an algorithm that is essentially optimized for GPU. It could be ported to an FPGA, but the advantage that the FPGAs have in terms of speed just simply won't play with the new algorithm. The GPUs are always going to be, I think, more energy efficient than the FPGAs, but that doesn't mean the FPGAs can't play. It just means that they're not going to dominate the entire network. Because that was the egalitarian response. We said, we're not going to presume to tell people that they can't mine Mochimo, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to create this algorithm that, if people are going to violate our license, which they're doing, by the way, mm-hmm. It's against the law what they're doing to mine on an FPGA. But if they're going to do it, we don't want them to dominate the network. That's the bottom line.
But at the same time, there are people that are out there that live in the world and they have these devices, and they obviously have some interest and see value in the project, just like the GPU miners.
Oh, I don't fault their motivations. I understand.
No,
They want Mochimo. Thank you for wanting Mochimo.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. You're breaking our license, which specifically says provision of the code on ASICs and FPGAs is a violation of the license.
Yeah.
But they're doing it with impunity. So, and they're going to continue to do it because I can't stop them. So the question is, do we punish them? Do we take this approach where we're authoritarian and say, how dare you? No, we don't do that. We sue them. That's what we do. And while we're suing them, we make sure that anybody who wants to mine this coin can mine this coin.
Right. At the end of the day, we took a route that was more fair and more egalitarian, and we just tried to move forward with it.
That's right.
And it was a struggle, because some of the early solutions would get the job done in terms of removing them from the network, but wasn't fair. And it was an internal community discussion between the core contributors about what we needed to do, and we took some more time to do the thing, and everyone was, I think everyone's patience was a little tested, the GPU miners. Because as you mentioned, we have people on this project that literally their first experience mining on a project ever, or doing anything with cryptocurrency, was with Mochimo, and have made significant investments, and then all of a sudden they're getting starved out. So with the impending release of 2.4, we'll have resolved that situation. So we're pretty excited about that. And we've got about 20 minutes to go. And with that, that's a nice segue into the discussion of where we think we're going to be going. So we know we've got 2.4 coming out some point in the future. So tell me, what's in 2.4? We know that there's this piece that's going to level the playing field, but what else is in there? And then beyond that, where do you... we don't generally talk about where we're going to try to take a project, because it's often it's community discussion at this point. But I'm curious to hear what you've been hearing, because a lot of people direct message you and they say, hey, Matt, can we have this, or can we do that?
Yeah.
So people are always asking us for things. And the list is always much longer than even our fairly decent sized core contributors can do, because we all have day jobs. So what are those things on the list that you think may happen in the next year. What do you think?
I can tell you our focuses are. You know. So let me answer the first thing that you asked, which was what's on the plate for 2.4. So if you don't know, 2.4 introduces a new algorithm called Peach. So our old algorithm was Trigg's algorithm. The Peach algorithm is what we call an FPGA tough algorithm, meaning it's really tough for FPGAs to mine it. And part of the reason why we did that FPGA tough is we don't know where GPUs are going to go. Also, we don't know what technology of the future might bring to mining. So if we did what we were originally looking at doing, which would have killed the FPGAs entirely, we were tying our own hands in some way. So just want to mention that, put that off to the side. But with 2.4, we are introducing the new Peach algorithm, which is optimized for GPU solving. We are also releasing the public API. So if you don't know what an API is something that we call a middleware. It is a kind of translation service between two protocols. Like Mochimo has a protocol where you can send and receive transactions and check balances and all those things. And the protocol is specific to Mochimo. And other organizations have their own protocols where they send and receive transactions and check balances. And whether they're a cryptocurrency exchange or a payment processor or what have you, they have a certain way of doing things. So what they want to do is they want to translate the way that they send and receive data in such a way that it allows them to collect the data that they need to send and receive transactions on the Mochimo network. That's where the API comes in. Mm-hmm. It's an industry standard middleware layer that allows people to integrate to our cryptocurrency system. So the API, the public API release is really huge because it's another way that we empower the community of developers and the ecosystem of payment processors and exchanges and retailers to use Mochimo as its intended purpose, which is to say as a medium of exchange. So that's really huge for us. We've had a huge number, and I can't exaggerate this, a huge number of exchanges contact us in the last year saying, hey, we want to list Mochimo, we want to do this and that. Can you give us a link to your API? And we said, well,
soon.
So about that, it's kind of an in-joke on our Discord server, and please join us there if you're listening to this in some other venue. But it's kind of a joke on our Discord server that whenever anybody asks when something's happening, we just say soon. We've actually got a trademark on the word soon. But we had to tell people, like, we're doing things in the order that they make sense, right? Mm-hmm. And we really wanted to burn in the network and make sure that it was really solid and stable and could scale, and we were sure that we were on the final iteration of the algorithm, because when you change those things, it's disruptive. You have to do a fork or something like that. It's really damaging, especially if somebody's already integrated your coin into an exchange or what have you. It can be really problematic and disruptive. And so what we said was, let's give it a year.
Yeah.
You know, so the plan all along was to be patient with the API exchange or the API release. And here we are now coming into what should be the most stable period of our history, and we hope that each successive period is that.
Yeah.
Right. We've arrived at this state where we have all the bells and whistles and supporting features and functions of the network. We're introducing the scalability factor with multi-destination transactions. Now is the perfect time to release a public API to let other people begin to play around with ways to extend the network and its capabilities, whether that's on exchange listing or not. So public API is coming. By the way, when I say 2.4 release, that's happening this week. Like, I don't know if you've seen the countdown. If you haven't logged into our server, our Discord server, or on our website, we have a countdown timer to June 29th, which is only, 4 days from now.
Yeah.
So the API release and the 2.4 release are happening. Multi-destination transactions, the only other big feature that we added in there. There's lots and lots of little features. We tweaked some things with networking to make it much more stable, to make the uptime for solving much higher. We fixed a couple of security issues, did lots of code reorganization. The number of changes when we started working on 2.4, I think we had 168 commits on the GitHub repository. Just from 2.3 to 2.4, we're over 360.
Wow.
Just to give you an idea of how many little things that we've tweaked and we've made the code better and stronger. We've had extensive testing. So 2.4 brings a more reliable GPU-only multi-destination transaction public API system that is sort of the next generation of our code base, and I'm very excited to see that go live here in the next few days.
So really, we're at a really critical time. Like this anniversary it's just everything's coming together in this week with all of these developments. We're at a point now where looking forward, it's actually difficult because really we've just quadrupled the amount of people in the world that can interact with our network by giving them an API and giving them a space platform. So when people ask what's the direction, well, you almost have to turn that back on them and say, I don't know, where do you want to take this now? Because now you're more empowered to do stuff with this. So these changes don't even have to really ask for permission. They don't, because we can't necessarily give them permission, but they don't need us. They don't have to sit down with Matt.
Well, that's the whole point.
And beg him to help them integrate. They can literally just download this API and make stuff happen.
Mm-hmm.
So the direction is going to be expanding in all directions this next year.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think a lot of my personal development effort will be expended towards helping those people that have community projects or have third-party projects or exchanges or what have you, do whatever it is that they want to do with Mochimo, answer their questions, and to help the space grow. That's how I plan to position that. One of the ways that I plan on doing that is to improve the documentation. We want to release the manual for the code base, which is extensive. We want to fill in the wiki. We have a fantastic wiki. If you haven't visited it, you should visit it. There's tons of data in there, lots of really good information. We want to make sure that we focus on improving the quality of the documentation and communication around our core messaging, which is a lot of that's done via our Medium article. So a lot of what we're trying to do is communicating to other people about what's available to them, if you will. So I see that coming up. We're already hard at work, by the way, at 2.5. So that's another important thing I should advise you of, is that while 2.4 is not even officially launched right now, 2.5 is already in the works. And to answer your second question, here I am about 10 minutes into the answer to the first one. To answer your second question, which was, what is the community asking for, and what sorts of things are on our list? The next feature that we're going to be delivering is a privacy layer. And it's a privacy layer in the sense that it enables complete anonymity of Mochimo ownership, which is to say you can own Mochimo and transfer Mochimo, and there will be, when you have completed doing that, no trace that it had ever happened. And that's an innovation that the entire community voted, because we asked them. We said, what things do you want? Well, they said, get rid of the FPGAs. Well, okay, we can do that. And they said, we need multi-destination transactions. So these are things the community requested. And then they said, we want a privacy coin. All right, so that's where we're going next. The privacy layer is going to make it possible. You don't have to use the privacy layer. It's there if you have a desire for it. If you live in an oppressive regime that has issues with cryptocurrency or what have you, it's going to be there to allow people to own crypto in an untraceable way. So that's 2.5, and that's coming just around the corner as well.
Nice. So somebody just had a great question here, and we've only got a few minutes, but I do want to get on this. So the question is from Bing Bong. It's basically, what if somebody leaves? What if Matt pulls a Satoshi and just disappears?
Pulls a Satoshi.
Technically it would be a Matoshi, but will it survive without you? So we've actually done some discussion around this as a group, succession planning, and we have things in place for the pre-mine protection of certain assets, but then there's like the knowledge asset. And so talk a little bit about what we're doing and what we're continuing to work towards to make sure that there are more than just you that knows the code. Because the fact is that we're not just a map project anymore. We've got a lot of folks that have really handled the code and done stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But let's talk about what the other things, like sitting down and walking people through the code to make sure they understand it. I'm assuming we're going to keep doing that, but what else do you see happening to make sure that we can replace you?
So a couple things.
Yeah.
The code base is entirely written in C and fairly easy to read C. We are releasing the manual shortly that walks everybody through the features and functions of the code base. That's documentation that's critical to maintaining it. We have an open source platform that's available via GitHub. You can clone that repository at will, play with it, make changes to it. A lot of our biggest community contributors took the code off to the side, did things to it, and then brought it back. And said, hey, you should roll this into mainline code. And we looked at it as a team and said, yeah, you're absolutely right. We should do that, right? So if I walked away from the project altogether, it would keep going. There are people out there that have a deep understanding of the code, whether it's DCAT and his group of programmers, whether it's Chris or Ortis, or a certain phantom character that exists in the background.
So there are people out there that understand.
Absolutely. I mean, code base is really actually not that difficult to follow. I've found that when people first dive in, they find it very easy to understand it and to edit the code, and that was by design. So I'm not necessary for this project. I think it's good to have a guiding voice that's providing a vision, right? I think obviously with me involved, that cohesive vision and bringing the right resources together to continue to evolve the project, I think that's an important role. But I'm not operating under any delusion that there would be somebody super happy to jump in and keep that ball rolling. So I don't think that I'm a necessary component. And if I decided to pull a Satoshi, I don't think it would be problematic. Does that answer your question? It was Bing Bong that answered that?
Bing Bong, yeah. So I think that was an excellent question, because I've had other folks ask, what happens if something happens in math? Well, there's so many people now doing stuff, and in fact, some of the core architectural changes that we've made and direction changes have come through a conversation with you, but it wasn't necessarily your idea.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, so a lot of the way that the node syncs now is, I gotta say, it's probably 5 to 10 times faster than the original sync, which was already fast. And that was something that Chris came up with out of necessity, because he's in some far off remote land and had delay and lag syncing. Yeah. So he did some significant architectural change to the way that the system syncs. And honestly, it took me a little while to wrap my head around it, but he proved that it was better, and other people started using it.
Yeah,
that's the thing. I didn't have to. It wasn't like, oh, I will let you put your code in the code base. No, it was just other people were like, hey, where's the Chris repository? We're going to download that because it's better. And then I said, hey, Chris, I need to put your stuff in main repository to try to keep something focused. So yeah, you're exactly right about that.
So Bing Bong also asked, since I remember a long time ago that the team had to deal with the SEC and lawyers and such. How did that go, Matt?
Oh.
Our favorite three-letter agency. Let's talk about them for a minute.
It's important to understand what happened in 2017 was a lot of people were stolen from by crypto projects. That's really what happened. We had people basically were capitalizing on the hype, and it was hype. We saw the pop of that bubble. We are, unfortunately, I think, revisiting it, but we saw the hype inflate in people's minds the value of ideas that had no substance in the crypto space, and they were selling snake oil or tulip bulbs or whatever you want to call it. But bottom line is they were selling something that had no value and extracting millions of dollars worth of value from people on the assurance that they would continue to maintain the project and bring it value. Now, when you give somebody money on the assurance that you're going to own a piece of their project and of its future success, in financial terms, we call that an investment. And we call it an investment contract. And when you have a business that has come about for the purpose of creating a cryptocurrency and then goes and sells that currency to people with the intent of getting them to believe that they're going to produce something of value, we call that kind of investment a security. And the Securities and Exchange Commission exists to prevent companies from coming into existence, wowing people with ideas that have no substance, getting them to buy stock, and then taking a run with the money.
Right. They're there to slow things down and to
Protect,
to
yeah.
serve the public and keep them from getting hoodwinked into buying something that's garbage.
That's exactly right.
So they've started to take a more active role, and they're starting to really understand technology better, and they're starting to make moves to respond to something that's much more fast moving than traditionally a government agency. Or traditionally, government agencies don't always move very fast, and yet they're trying to respond to this technology that's moving at a blistering pace. And so we've had communication with them.
Sure. So we've had a couple of closed door meetings with the SEC where they are inquiring about the nature of work that we do. And part of that is just us reassuring them that, look, we've done everything that we can to cover within the lines. We've discussed asking them to make a determination publicly about the nature of our project. We are still in the development stages of that. So we can't really speak to that, and we have to be very careful, right? Because these sorts of things, talking about future developments in general, you'll notice that we're very careful to not do that on this project. Like, I'm telling you about the privacy layer because it already exists.
Right.
All right, we don't make forward-looking statements because we don't want people to interpret what we're saying as investment advice. Hey, you should own Mochimo or this or that. That's not what we're doing here. We're producing a superior cryptocurrency. That's what we're doing here, and we're focused on technology and on delivering it. But unfortunately, we have to navigate the nightmare that 2017 ICO scams left in its wake, and we have to prove to regulatory agencies, be it the IRS or the SEC or banking regulators, that we're not a security, and we're not enabling money laundering or AML KYC by funding people with the coin and so on and so forth. We're simply creating a medium of exchange. That's what we're doing. And so that's kind of a long answer. It doesn't give you a clear reply, I understand. But the bottom line is we're still in communication with the SEC. It's a long process. I have no idea if and when we'll get to any kind of resolution with that. But the bottom line is we have attorneys, as you mentioned, whose job it is to do that. Like they're very good at what they do. They work with the SEC every day. They know them by name. They're down in the offices all the time, and those are the people representing us. And we feel pretty confident when we say that we have done everything right, such that we will not be classified as a security. That's what we believe from day one.
All right. So we've got we're actually just slightly over time.
I think we're gonna need to actually call it here because we told everybody an hour.
Yeah.
I want to wrap this up by saying happy birthday, Mochimo, and all of the people that made it possible. We've now got a couple dozen core contributors on the community every day, an almost even number of moderators, people performing escrows. We've got over 100 people now that have earned the Mochi Buro rank, which means that they are active participants in the community. We are continuing to do all kinds of interesting things today up until about 2 a.m. Eastern. We're going to be doing the trivia t-shirt giveaways. We're going to be doing the announcement of additional bounties and other recognition for people that have been part of the project, particularly those people who have been helpful with the beta testing and have made it possible for us to very quickly bring the version 2.4 of the code to market. Those things are happening. Recognition of some of the core contributors and the amazing work that they've done is coming, and lots of opportunities to earn Mochimo will be forthcoming over the next 5 hours. So stick with us. Thank you so much for being a part of this adventure with us. It has been an absolute pleasure over the last year. We are so looking forward to the years to come.
Thank you, everybody. With that, we're going to close out the call, and at some point in the future, we will have this recording out there for folks. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. Definitely not George. We'll be posting that at some point, probably next week or two. So
Sounds good.
Keep an eye out for that. But thanks for everybody's time, and with that, I'm going to hang up.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
See you.